My boyfriend's first love is dying, and he wants me, a substitute, to donate bone marrow to save her. But I'm already pregnant. He glanced at the ultrasound sheet and said, so what? Later, a kidnapper played Russian roulette and made him choose one out of two. Seeing his eyes nearly popping out of his sockets, I stayed behind for his first love. While waiting at the hospital for the test results, I received an anonymous text message. The person in the photo wasn't a stranger. It was my boyfriend of 5 years, Ethan. Ethan, who is usually calm and composed, rarely loses his cool like this. He didn't care about the people around, tightly hugging a girl in the bustling airport. Just one look, I knew it was Jolan, his first love, the one who was always out of reach. Jolan is adopted, Richard's fiancée. She is the girl Ethan cherished and protected for more than 10 years. So much so that after her brother's car accident, he didn't dare confess his feelings. He could only watch her leave for another country to heal alone. Nancy told me all this. Nancy is Ethan's assistant, and has been Jolan's close friend for more than a decade. Unsurprisingly, she probably sent that photo too, to their group of friends. I'm just a vicious woman who schemed to get into this position. A poor substitute trying to imitate his first love. But back then, it was Ethan who came onto me first. I already liked someone. I just mistook him for that person at the school library once, and he forced his way into my life, turning it upside down. Finally, when I didn't know how to pay for my grandpa's expensive medical bills, he said casually, Daisy, I can help you. What could I do? Ethan is really rich. His family is the leader in the biopharma industry. To people like them, what made me struggle so hard is just a night's expenditure in a bar. If I didn't look a bit like Jolan, would Ethan even notice me? Being with him was my lucky break. It'd be ungrateful to ask for more. They all said I was ungrateful. Maybe Ethan thought the same. Maybe he even forgot. When I was bullied and dragged into an empty classroom, he looked at me the same way, frowned slightly. Don't mess with Jolan. In his eyes, everything about Jolan came first. No one else mattered after that. Then and now, when Ethan came back, I was taking the extinguished candles off the cake one by one. He paused for a moment. Why didn't you wait for me? I looked at him. I did. It was the last minute of yesterday. Now, my birthday is already over. Ethan didn't say anything. He glanced at his phone and hesitated for a second. Sorry, I lost track of time. I smiled and didn't respond. Let's eat the cake. He walked around to my back and held my hand. I'll cut with you. He gently brushed my hair aside, and his hot breath touched the back of my neck, until his warm breath came to my lips. I lowered my eyes to the messily cut cake. Ethan, can you guess my wish? He was distracted. What wish? He chuckled lightly, squeezing my waist subtly. Maybe you should wish it to me. It might come true sooner. He's always confident, never leaving room for doubt, as if everything is within his grasp. Of course, for someone like him, there's no need to consider the back roads. My wish is, I heard my calm voice say, I wish we'd break up soon. The hands lingering on my waist froze. In the next second, he grabbed my shoulders and turned me to face him. He gripped my wrist, looking at me with terrifying coldness, word by word. Daisy, are you out of your mind? Am I crazy? I stared back at him. Jolan is back. Can't you be straightforward? Or are you afraid to admit you like her? Shut up. Ethan fiercely flung my hand away. I stumbled back a few steps and painfully hit the table corner. Seeing me in pain, Ethan instinctively took half a step forward. I rubbed my sore waist and, after a moment, couldn't help but laugh. Ethan, look at you. You like Jolan so much you can't stand hearing anything bad about her. When will you stop this ridiculous game of substitutes? His face was frozen by my words. After a long pause, he coldly said, Daisy, you're really crazy. Even if I really treat you as a substitute, so what? This game won't stop unless I say so. What right do you have to say no? He bent down and gripped my jaw firmly. Need me to jog your memory? Who was the one who got into my bed first? The special drug for large B-cell lymphoma costs $1.2 million per shot. The price was the least of the hurdles. I begged all the way from the hospital to Ethan. He smiled and said, Daisy, you're really shameless. When I offered to help, you pretended not to hear. Now you regret it. Need me now, huh? Gradually, he stopped smiling. Who do you think you are? I'm not something to be used and discarded at will. His words were hurtful, but he didn't tell me to leave. His gaze wandered over my face distinctly. I think I understood his meaning. So, I gathered my courage, sat on his lap, clung to his shoulders, and shakily leaned into please. Ethan, I was wrong. He turned his head away, unmoved. You think your kiss is worth $1.2 million? Of course not. I guided his hand to my collar, forced a smile. Ethan, like this, can I get a chance to make up for my mistake? He coldly watched as I unbuttoned. At some point, he could no longer stand my clumsiness. Harshly, he kissed me. Stop smiling like that. It's ugly. Later, I realized that smile was too humble and too unlike Jolan. When I was 20, I ended up in Eason's bed. I guess Eason still felt a bit guilty towards me. The next day, a belated birthday gift was handed to me. This dress suits you. Remember to wear it to the company party tonight, he texted. I looked at his message and suddenly burst out laughing. The delivery guy seemed confused. I pointed at the pale purple backless dress and laughed so hard that I cried. Isn't it funny? I said. Eason's way of humiliating people was getting more sophisticated. In the evening, I wore that inappropriate dress to the year-end party. My arrival caused some whispering. I didn't need to listen carefully to know what they were discussing. Probably how similar Jolan and I look, and the striking mark on my shoulder. It's a burn scar, stretching from my right shoulder to my left waist, forming a dark red patch. Twisted, mottled, and shocking. The young intern must have never seen a guest with such little regard for their image. After hesitating for a moment, she led me to a corner seat and kindly brought me a shawl, whispering, "It might get cold tonight, be careful." The girl seemed to be of college age, still carrying a hint of youthful innocence. I smiled and thanked her. Watching her walk away, I suddenly saw my younger self. At 19, my eyes were also full of hope for the world. That year, I got into a good university. My teachers and classmates liked me, and I received a merit-based scholarship in my first year. Later, with help from my advisor, I found a part-time job at the library. Running back and forth between the classroom, library, and dorm kept me busy, but life always felt bright. My grandparents planned to move their snack shop to my college town once our family debts were cleared. I also found a boy I liked and was preparing to confess my feelings, encouraged by my roommates. At that time, I thought my hardships were over, and I could live a simple, happy life. Then my grandfather started losing weight for no reason, sweating and feeling nauseous at night. Initially, we thought it was just a cold, but it turned out to be large B-cell lymphoma. Upon hearing it was cancer, my grandfather insisted on going home. "No more treatments. I can't drag you down just because of an old man," he said. He kept saying he had lived long enough, but my life had just begun, and I couldn't bear more debt. How could he say he had lived enough? He never had an easy day. After my mom passed away, my grandparents, already in their late 50s, raised me with gritted teeth and cleared the massive debts from my mom's treatment. Just when they could breathe a little easier, life played another cruel joke. My mom had been in the hospital for 2 months. We sold the house and borrowed from every relative and friend, but still couldn't save her. She died from severe burns and a lack of money. How could I watch another family member die? Being with Eason, I have no regrets, but sometimes, I just really miss the 19-year-old Daisy. That's all. Jolan, why are you sitting there? I turned my head and saw Eason's smile freeze. You see, he mistook me for her again. Thinking back, I mistook him once, but he mistook me countless times. He's always been vindictive. That day, I finally spotted the familiar figure by the window after searching most of the library. Calming my nerves, I gently tapped his shoulder with a smile. Why are you here? Have you finished reading Kafka's The Castle? A slightly annoyed and completely unfamiliar face turned around. He looked momentarily confused seeing me. I quickly bowed and apologized. I'm sorry. I mistook you for someone else. Realizing I recognized that face after turning away, I told myself it was okay. We never crossed paths. He wouldn't remember me. But instead of my intended confession target, Eason caught and wouldn't let go. You never get what you want. Why are you wearing this? Eason's handsome face turned familiar with irritation. Who told you to wear this? I looked at him calmly. You had someone send it to me. Told me to wear it to the evening party. I definitely, he started to say, then cut off irritably, even if it was sent wrong. Why didn't you refuse? Don't you remember what you said yesterday? I slowly repeated his words. You said in this game, if you don't call it off, I have no right to say no. Eason stared at me, forcing each word through clenched teeth. Daisy, must you do this? He grabbed my hand and dragged me outside. Soon, I understood why he was so agitated. Jolan was wearing an almost identical dress. Her smooth skin made me look like a joke. Even Jolan seemed surprised by his rare outburst of anger and hesitated before approaching. Eason, she said softly. Nancy followed, and seeing my dress, her slightly lifted lips showed her smugness. She respectfully greeted Eason. Eason had no patience for anyone other than Jolan. How did you manage to mix this up? If you can't even get the dress right, you might as well quit. Nancy rarely got scolded in public, making her eyes turn red. Jolan shielded her and took the blame. Ethan, it's not Nancy's fault. I asked her to accompany me to the store. Maybe the staff mixed it up and gave my dress to Daisy. Ethan barely calmed down in front of Jolan. I'll take her to change, he said, giving me a cold glance and snorting. Jolan stopped him. Ethan, can you wait a moment? I want to ask Daisy something, she said, turning to me with a slight nod. Daisy, did you see a necklace in the package? Probably left it in the fitting room, and the staff packed it with the other stuff, she said. It's a silver chain, not worth much. She looked at my neck and asked politely, but Richard gave it to me, and it's very important to me. Could you give it back? Everyone was looking at me. I was taken aback. Are you talking about this chain on my neck? It was a gift from an old friend. Nancy sneered. Yours. Quit lying. Everyone knows Richard designed this for Jolan. She had it made specially based on his original design notes. There's only one like it in the world. Funny coincidence that you have it right after Jolan lost hers. You said it was a friend who gave it to you. Care to share who? I was about to explain, but then I realized I never actually knew his name. Back then, he came to the library looking for an old manuscript. The staff didn't want the hassle and claimed it wasn't there. I hesitated but told him quietly when he was about to leave disappointed, we have it. I spent the whole morning looking for it with him in the storage area. We found the book, but I lost the chain I had worn since childhood. I was frantic, and he helped me search all afternoon, but we couldn't find it. He felt really bad. Even though I was upset, I shook my head. It's fine. It was my own carelessness. A week later, he came back to return the book. He handed me a small bag mysteriously, saying he found it inside the book. I opened it and saw a chain that looked similar, but was clearly not the same. There was a card that said, "Thank you." I looked up, but he was already gone. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Nancy gave me a mocking smile. Can't even make up a name, huh? Jolan's eyes filled with tears. Ethan, that's the only thing Richard left me. Make Daisy give it back, please. Ethan's face darkened, and he stared coldly at me. Take it off. I lost my ability to speak, stammering, no, really, it's mine. It seemed like Ethan finally lost all patience. His gaze was cold, and his tone slow. Daisy, take it off. I clutched the chain tightly. It felt like I was brought back to that afternoon in high school. Nancy and a group of people had cornered me, dragged me into an empty classroom, waking up a sleeping Ethan. Everyone fell silent instantly. I was pinned to the ground. Nancy carefully explained to Ethan that they were helping Jolan vent her anger. Ethan just glanced over indifferently. Don't cause a scene in front of Jolan. The classroom door closed, and the bright sunlight gradually disappeared. Past or present, it was the protection I never received. As Ethan yanked hard, the necklace broke, snapping back against my neck and leaving a painful mark. I didn't need a mirror. The shocked expressions around me told me it must have hurt a lot. Ethan hadn't expected me to hold on so tightly. Startled for a moment, his anger intensified. Throwing the necklace to Jolan, he grabbed my arm and pulled me towards the door. Jolan, who had probably never seen this side of Ethan, burst into tears. Ethan, she reached out to grab him, but he intentionally or unintentionally avoided her. Ethan yelled irritably, not sure at whom. Why are you just standing there? Get a car. We had taken only a few steps when we heard Nancy exclaim in shock. Instantly, Ethan spun around and saw Jolan collapsed on the ground. Nancy was crying. Ethan, why are you so harsh? Don't you know Jolan? She can't live much longer. Ethan's pupils contracted, and he released my hand. Instinctively, I reached out to grasp something, but all I caught was the flutter of his shirt as he rushed to Jolan's side. Ethan was gone for 3 days. When I was beginning to wonder if this was a breakup by default, he reappeared. His sharp jaw was rough with stubble, and he looked exhausted. His first words to me were, Jolan has leukemia. The second were, get ready, you're going for a matching test tomorrow. I found it hilarious and couldn't help but laugh. After a while, I managed to stop. Ethan, do you think that whenever you need something, everyone must make way for your noble love? Ethan frowned at me. This is a matter of life and death. Is it? To you, is a life precious? He interrupted me loudly. Daisy, you owe her. I stared at him, speechless. He avoided my eyes. If it weren't for your mom, her family wouldn't have fallen apart. They said Jolan and I were sisters. Before I turned 7, I had no idea my family was different from any other. It was just that Dad's work kept him busy, and we only saw him every few months, sometimes longer. At school, teachers often called me by the wrong name. I thought you were Jolan, you two look so alike. I started to pay attention to the name Jolan. One recess, a friend pointed her out to me. That's the third grader, Jolan. I saw a girl with 3 stripes on her arm. Her ponytail bounced as she played jump rope, effortlessly attracting all eyes. When I got home, I was eager to tell my mom this new discovery, but I felt someone watching me. It was a tall, thin woman with an intense, gloomy stare. I met her again, and understood why she looked at me that way. That was Jolan's mom. I've forgotten exactly how it happened. My first clear memory is my mom shielding me from most of the scalding water. My back felt like it was on fire. Everyone was frozen by the sudden chaos. Jolan's mom glared at us, spat out 2 words, "You slut." By the time people reacted, she was gone. Mom was rushed to the hospital in shock. Later, the police handling her case told my grandpa she'd jumped into the river. They were searching downstream, but said she was likely dead. I later learned that Jolan's mom had dragged her to the bridge that day, spewing bitterness. "Luke, you heartless man. That slut ruined her face. See how you'll marry her now. You've been avoiding us. Do you want to leave? Fine, watch your daughter die then." At the end, she still couldn't bear to take her daughter with her and pushed Jolan away before jumping. Once the news came out, no one condemned the evil act that happened at the elementary school gate. Who could blame a desperate wife, especially since she paid with her life? Isn't that enough? Everyone said the same to us. When someone dies, their debts die with them, right? At the time, I couldn't understand. We were the ones hurt, so why did it feel like everyone thought it was our fault? Later, I learned, as soon as you get labeled as the mistress, no one cares if the woman was deceived or if she was a victim too. Mistresses are seen as filthy, and their kids are naturally guilty by association. There was a long silence. No one spoke. Ethan loosened his collar and walked into the room by himself. "Someone will come by tomorrow to do a checkup on you." But I just had to be stubborn. "I won't agree to it." He stopped and turned back. "What did you say?" I looked at him and spoke slowly, clearly. I said, "I don't agree." "Daisy," he frowned. "I should have made it very clear. This isn't something up for discussion." I interrupted him. "Ethan, why should the world hand over everything you want just because you need it? Let's break up. Whatever happens between you and Jolan is none of my concern. I never owed either of you anything." Ethan stared at me expressionlessly for a while and then let out a sudden sneer. "Break up? What gives you the right?" His eyes darkened. "Daisy, do you think just because your grandpa passed away, you can kick me out now? Better get one thing straight. Your grandpa's medical bills over these years were more than 1.2 million. If I don't let go, you need to be conscious of your role as a stand-in." Then his tone shifted to something unclear. "The nursing home called a few days ago, saying your grandmother misses you. It's been 3 months since you contacted your grandma, right? Let's go see her after all this is over." Ethan was reminding me, as long as he held the card of my grandma, I had no choice but to be at his mercy. Just as he was about to leave, I said, "But, Ethan, I'm pregnant." Ethan was taken aback for just a moment when he heard that. He glanced at the ultrasound report and then casually threw out, "So, are you trying to use this to threaten me?" My nails dug into my palms as a cold shiver crept up my spine. "I'm not." Halfway through, I realized how laughable it was to argue like that. "I've already arranged for a checkup." He paused. "If it's not compatible, then give birth," he said, not explaining what would happen if it was compatible. I didn't ask. We both knew. In Ethan's mind, how could an unformed embryo ever compare to the first love of his life he kept dear for over 10 years? There was only one possible outcome. That night, Ethan hugged me from behind in silence for a long time. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I faintly heard him say out of the blue, "From now on." I finished the sentence in my head. "It won't happen again. Ethan, there won't be a next time." Ethan wanted to use this child to secure Jolan's survival, and I needed to use it to gain freedom for myself and my grandma. Deep down, we were both equally despicable, unworthy to be parents. The next time I saw Jolan, we accidentally wore the same clothes again. Ironically, the last time it was similar dresses. This time, it was mass-produced hospital gowns. I wasn't sure if Ethan intended it or not. Nonetheless, we ended up in the same hospital. We ran into each other in the garden. Sunlight flickered through the phoenix tree leaves, casting a pattern on Jolan's frail frame. I wanted to make an excuse to leave, but her pale face made me stay. After much pleading from her, we walked slowly along the path back. When we reached a high platform rest pavilion, she suddenly called out to me, "Daisy, isn't it tiring to always snatch what doesn't belong to you?" I paused. "What do you mean?" She chuckled lightly. "I heard you were the one who climbed into Ethan's bed on your own. Didn't anyone tell you he already had someone he loved? Is 2 million really that much? You are pretty cheap, aren't you?" I tried hard to stay composed, but when she said, "or," Are you and your mother both equally despicable? Shut up. Just as I turned around, she suddenly stepped closer. Startled, my hands instinctively went up to protect myself. Jolan staggered back a few steps, then crumpled to one side. Behind me came Eason's panicked voice. Jolan. Eason locked me up for a week. In the dim, swaying world, his hatred was fierce and profound. No matter how I resisted, I couldn't break away. He whispered in my ear, do you hate Jolan so much? She can't compete with you for anything anymore. In my most painful moments, I gasped like a fish out of water, hoping for just a bit of oxygen to escape the choking reality. It felt like being back in my weakest times, endlessly calling for my grandma. But I knew she couldn't protect me either. In my delirium, I grabbed Eason's shirt. After donating the marrow, can you let me and grandma go? Eason's movements paused. Shadows fell over his eyes, but I couldn't read his expression. You and Jolan aren't a match, so donating marrow is useless. Then he suddenly erupted. I told you, until I say stop. Don't think you can leave. After a pause, you only have me, got it. I closed my eyes, and tears that were originally dry gushed out like a broken dam. For the next half-month, Eason didn't come, but I always knew what they were up to. For example, Jolan found a suitable donor. For example, Eason ordered a ring and planned to propose after the surgery. I couldn't afford to care about Nancy's deliberate news anymore. I kept begging, let me see grandma. I've been dreaming about her. She's not well. Over the phone, Eason sounded impatient. Daisy, stop making me angry. By the end of that week, my health worsened, but Eason only sent people to give me 4 drips at home, never letting me step outside. One day, a doctor came over. Just a few minutes after the injection, I suddenly felt dizzy. Before I could say anything, I fainted, catching a glimpse of familiar eyes above a white mask. When I woke up, everything was pitch black. The black cloth over my eyes made it hard to figure out how many people were around me. The roaring sea wind and the sound of waves told me I was likely on a deck. Then came Eason's voice from across. What do you want? The kidnapper's voice came through a voice changer, sounding eerie, as expected of the new leader of the G family. Even when you lose something precious, you stay so calm. You're making me doubt if I chose the right leverage. Someone rudely yanked off my hood. After a wave of dizziness, my vision cleared, and I slowly took in the surroundings. There was a huge screen in front of me. On the screen, Eason's face first showed a hint of surprise, then a disdainful smile. This is your leverage. You think a woman I can command at will is my most precious thing. The kidnapper, wearing a clown mask, moved beside me, gripping my chin to face the camera. Impossible. Did my investigation fail? Though Eason has many women, this one is special. He glanced meaningfully at my belly. Eason suddenly laughed coldly. Special? She's just a stand-in. The kidnapper exaggeratedly held his head. So, I got the wrong person. Eason responded indifferently. If this is all you have to show me, I don't have time for your boring games. The kidnapper interrupted. Okay, no problem. If the stand-in doesn't matter, this real one should be the one dear to Eason's dad's heart. With that, another hood was pulled off, revealing Jolan's pale face. Eason, save me. Eason's fists clenched tightly, his voice cold. Who are you? What do you want? The kidnapper laughed wildly. At my age, I don't want much. My only pleasure is to see my enemies suffer. Your company has made plenty of enemies over the years, right? Guessing who I am will keep you troubled. Then his tone suddenly changed, smiling cryptically. Eason, let's play a game. Maybe I can help solve your biggest problem right now. A 6-shot revolver with 1 bullet. Which one do you want to shoot first? Eason must be going crazy. I heard him threatening the kidnapper madly, saying he wouldn't let any of them go. Let her go, and I can let everything else slide. I think you know the company's power extends beyond this. The kidnapper paused, then laughed heartily. You're right. Your company controls half the drug trafficking in northern Myanmar. It wouldn't be wrong to call you the underground kings. If we were in Myanmar, I'd never do this. But out here, he pointed the camera around. In the vast open sea, it wouldn't be easy for Eason to find us, would it? So, Eason, choose. He waved the gun back and forth between Jolan and me. With Eason's curse and Jolan's cries around me, I suddenly felt incredibly heavy. I said, if you won't choose, then let me. The kidnapper found it very amusing. What now? Want me to take out your love rival first? I shook my head. First shot, choose me. I saw Eason's pupils contract on the screen. Daisy, shut up, shut up. You're just a stand-in, a plaything. What right do you have to choose? Under Eason's glaring eyes, the kidnapper fired the first shot. With the gunshot, Eason's screen immediately went black. The kidnapper's eerie voice reappeared. Sorry about that. I didn't expect to hit the bullet on the first shot. I'm a man of my word. The next one is yours. In 3 days, if Ethan's dad doesn't show up alone on my ship, you'll soon hear the next gunshot. Awaiting a good message, Ethan frantically used all his power to search for the ship in the open sea, until news came 2 days later. In the waters where the video signal was received, a deliberately exploded fishing boat was found, with its people missing. Not that one, it can't be that one. They must be on another ship. She has to be alive. Find them, dead or alive. He couldn't continue, not daring to imagine if he actually saw Daisy's body. And how could she die? She was always like a reed, bouncing back no matter how hard she was pressed. He knew all her weaknesses, and each time she showed fatigue, he used her grandmother to keep her. Half a year ago, the nursing home sent word that her grandmother was on her deathbed, hoping to see her granddaughter. But he selfishly kept the truth from her. He feared that once Daisy knew her only family member had passed, she would leave without hesitation, and he would have nothing to keep her anymore. Fortunately, heaven helped him again by giving them another bond. When the secretary told him Daisy secretly visited the hospital, he had a hunch. Until the pregnancy diagnosis landed on his desk, he couldn't believe he had a child. Northern Myanmar mainly worships Buddha, but Ethan was one of the rare non-believers. Since taking over the family business, the white jade statue had been locked away. That day, he unusually opened the room and offered incense sincerely. Unlike his ancestors asking for prosperity and family fortune, his wish was simple, just for his lover and child to be safe. When his assistant reported Jolan was behind the fishing boat, he wasn't surprised. Since going abroad, she always claimed to be Richard's widow, mingling with those old men. They always eyed him, discontent that an illegitimate child became the head, constantly undermining him. He had been holding back all this time, but when Jolan suddenly announced she was coming back from abroad, he knew his chance had come. So, he let Jolan put on her emotional first love act in front of him, and he gladly played along. But he made sure to avoid Daisy's sad and disappointed gaze. He thought, just get through this, and everything will be fine. After this, nothing will ever hold him back again. Before wrapping up all his plans, he found an excuse to keep Daisy trapped in the villa to prevent any accidents. He had to ensure that she and the child were under his watch, but he didn't expect Jolan to find a loophole. Seeing Daisy tied up tightly in the kidnapper's video, he struggled to stay calm. When he heard Daisy calmly say, "Pick me for the first shot," he almost jumped out of his chair. He wanted to explain, "It's not like that. You're not a stand-in. We share the same identity, both illegitimate children despised by the world, living in the shadows." Maybe initially, he had the idea of competing with Richard in mind, but now he's always grateful for his decision back then. He had no doubt that if he hadn't interfered, Daisy and Richard would have naturally ended up together. Because he knew his own darkness, ever since he was brought into the G family, everything he did was to measure up to Richard. That included his preferences, but perhaps luck was still on his side, because 6 months later, someone found Daisy in a small fishing village. He rushed over to see her wary eyes and her belly, which should have shown signs of pregnancy but didn't. With the help of doctors, my PTSD symptoms improved, and I gradually began to remember some people and events. One day, I woke up and instinctively called out Ethan. He paused for a moment, then hugged me tightly. "Daisy, you're finally back." I told Ethan that Jolan was behind the kidnapping. That first shot, aimed to skim my ear, was intended to lure Ethan to come alone. She said, "You killed your own brother." Ethan was silent for a long time before slowly saying, "I had no choice. In our family, every generation's leader has blood on their hands. My father did, and so do I." That night, unlike himself, Ethan cuddled with me and rambled on. He talked about his childhood with his prostitute mother in the slums. He described seeing his mother die from a drug overdose when he was 6. He recalled how he tiptoed around his parents once he was brought home. Richard was a good person, kind, naive, slow-witted. In a family soaked in filth, he was the only one who showed kindness to Jolan and me. He couldn't handle the blood and gore. It would have been impossible for him to keep that position even if it were forced on him. I didn't want to make the first move, but his mother, my father's wife, had already started targeting me. Jolan's right. I did kill him. I watched as he got into that tampered car. I even knew the moment it would explode, but I never told him. I always knew Jolan wanted to kill me. Fine by me. It just gave me a reason to clean up old forces. But she should never have hurt you. Weirdly enough, she's been hiding for the past 6 months without showing her face. I said, I found a chance to jump off the fishing boat. I didn't dare look back, and just kept swimming. I have no memory of what happened after that. Ethan, with a complicated expression, gently touched my now flat belly. It's okay. I won't let anyone hurt you again. We'll get married. We'll have other kids. I lowered my eyes, avoiding his gaze. Ethan, can you give me a gun? At least next time. I can protect myself. The wedding plans moved smoothly. Probably because post-eradicating the opposition, things were unusually busy. Ethan became swamped, even getting the wedding dress fitted by a tailor who came to the house. He didn't even have time to get measured. He just had them use his old sizes, and I was left to choose the style. When I went to the study in my wedding dress to find him, he was still deeply engrossed in work. Seeing me, his tense brow finally relaxed. I twirled around. How do I look? He stood up and hugged me. My wife looks good in anything. I gave him a playful look. What's the point if only I look good? Touching his stubbly face, I reminded him, 3 days until our wedding, and you plan to look this scruffy when we get married. He paused and then laughed, criticizing me already, and we're not even married yet. I replied, of course, I'm excited about the wedding, but you don't even want to try on your suit. It's like I'm the only one who cares. If you're so busy, why not ditch the wedding? People might think I'm marrying a panda if you show up with dark circles under your eyes. Ethan laughed heartily and finally got up to change in the bathroom at my urging. The sound of water dripped softly in my ears as the laptop lay open on the desk. Since that night, Ethan seemed to have dropped his guard around me. He didn't deliberately avoid me when handling some matters, but I always sensibly kept my distance. When he finally confirmed the wedding date, I knew he had integrated all the powers. It was time. Without hesitation, I clutched the portable hard drive and plugged it in. The day before the wedding, the news broke that a pharmaceutical factory was busted with a massive amount of unapproved controlled substances. Ethan was summoned. Before he left, he said to me, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." I knew he wouldn't return. The evidence I handed to the police was enough to put him away for lifetimes. Just when I thought it was all over, I got a call. The overseas number wasn't unfamiliar. It was my contact in the police force. Answering it, I heard frantic shouting, "Daisy, run." Ethan got out. The words barely finished before the phone shattered from a massive impact. I turned slowly to see Ethan pointing a gun at me. I had never seen him this disheveled. Typically perfectly arranged cuffs were now wrinkled and piled at his elbows, covered in dust and blood. His eyes filled with a whirlwind of emotions, but finally he just asked softly, "Why?" I didn't respond. He roared, "I'm asking you, why?" I looked up at him. "You already know, don't you? My dad is a cop. I'm a cop's daughter." This answer seemed to surprise him. "A cop?" He suddenly covered his face and started laughing. "A bastard child despised by everyone, talking about following in her father's footsteps. You are so naive, just like Richard, the type of person I hate the most." The helicopter blades spun rapidly, and we ascended higher and higher. Ethan was preparing to escape. He had identities in over a dozen countries. As long as he never set foot in northern Myanmar again, the police could do nothing to him. It started to rain lightly, and visibility outside the window grew blurry. Was it all going to end like this? I was unwilling to accept it. 5 years ago, on an afternoon after I found Ethan, I received a phone call. The person who met with me told me that my father was a police officer, and his body had been found in a cement pool in an abandoned factory not long ago. It was determined that he had died 15 years ago, when I was about to start elementary school. He said, because Jolan's mother could never accept that they were long divorced, to avoid upsetting her, my parents never had a wedding. For protection, my father had both daughters take our mother's surname. Then, on an assignment, he disappeared from all surveillance and never returned to the team. Initial evidence showed his death was related to the company. We would like to ask you to become an informant for the police. Over the years, the information I've provided had never been enough to uproot the G family. Until I found out I was pregnant, I knew that chance to uproot them had finally come. I pressed the gun against Ethan's head. I said slowly, "Honey, make the helicopter descend now." Ethan laughed. "Didn't expect the gun I gave you for self-defense would end up pointed at my head." He turned around slowly, eyes bloodshot. "You don't think a gun can make me surrender, do you? Everyone on this helicopter is mine. Before you pull the trigger, they would have already broken your arm and thrown you out from 10,000 meters up." I smiled. "Exactly. I never thought a gun could make you surrender. What do you care about? I never believed you ever loved me. Just like this gun you gave me. Even the magazine was modified. The bullets can't even fire. From the start, you worried I'd one day turn the gun on you." I tossed the gun out of the door. "Do you think the evidence I copied that day was what you wanted me to see? That's why you were so confident when summoned, thinking it'd be just like before, going through the motions and getting released. But when things didn't go as you expected, you must have been terrified, right? Ethan, you always think you're being pushed by others, that everything you do is out of necessity. Like Richard, Jolan, and me. But there is one person who has never wronged you. I looked at him and tears streamed down my face. Before you decide never to step foot on this land again, take one last look at this person. In the woods next to a charity hospital built by a foreign charity, there were small mounds of graves. These were resting places set up by philanthropists for unborn children. By an elm tree, there was a relatively new mound. For a time, I really wanted to keep him. Not for you, not for anyone else, just for myself, to have someone to depend on. But the doctor said, because of the drugs injected into me while on the boat for those days, I couldn't keep him past 5 months. Half crying, half laughing, I looked at Ethan. Ethan, do you believe in karma? The contraband you so casually traded worldwide ended up in your own child's body in the end. When I was detoxing, I thought, I must get back to you. I had to find all the evidence of your crimes and make you pay. The police, who had been lying in wait, swarmed and pinned Ethan to the ground. Ethan stared at me intensely. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, remained silent. I walked out of the woods, not looking back at him again. Jolan's epilogue. Right up until the moment I was captured, I never thought Daisy could be with the police. I didn't expect a lot of things. I didn't expect Ethan not to like me. After I found out Richard's death was his doing, the fire of revenge drove me to plan everything. I kept an eye on Ethan through Nancy. When I found out Daisy was around him, I was a bit surprised. Daisy and I, me and Daisy, we were supposed to be close strangers. My mom told me, Dad abandoned us and had a new family out there. At first, Dad hadn't visited for over 6 months. Mom's mental state got worse and worse. She stopped her medical checkups and wouldn't take her meds, becoming more paranoid and sensitive. After everything happened, there was no expected scolding. Instead, everyone showed me concern. Some were even outraged on my behalf, talking about my mom's hardships and the other woman's evil. I was seen as the most innocent victim, and got adopted by one of the most charitable families. While sorting through my mom's belongings, I found a divorce agreement dated the year after I was born. I knew what it meant. It would destroy the dream life that was within reach. So, I let the secret and the agreement burn with my mother's body. Life with the family wasn't as great. I didn't become a princess. Ethan's parents weren't as happy as people thought. I often heard them arguing late at night in the study. Ethan was part of the problem. He wasn't Ethan's mom's biological child. Unlike the dazzling Richard, he was quite unremarkable. I understood his silence. In that house, staying quiet was key to survival. Richard was the only light in that suffocating gloom. He had a warm smile, always kind and sincere. Marrying Richard was my only way to escape being a pawn in arranged marriages. Richard was incredible. Even when he knew I tricked him into my bed, he chose to be forgiving. He insisted on making me his fiancée, fulfilling my wish. I thought I was one step away from my dream life, until news of Richard's death came. At the funeral, Ethan's mom was so grief-stricken, she lost control, and needed to be taken back to her room. While looking after her, I pieced together the truth from her ramblings. Ethan killed Richard. Ethan's dad chose to cover it up for the family's sake. Ethan's mom had lost her mind, but as Richard's fiancée, I was determined to avenge him. Also, for myself, to claim what I deserved. I teamed up with factions in the corporation that opposed Ethan. We planned everything, waiting for Ethan to fall into our trap. But I never expected the police to find us first. Daisy was barely alive when rescued, with obvious needle marks on her arms. Those old drug lords hated Ethan with a passion, so they wouldn't spare anyone close to him. Seeing her made me feel both sad and relieved. If I weren't their ally, I saw Daisy again in prison. She was in her police uniform, her badge number all too familiar. I've seen those digits countless times in photos left by my father. What a joke. The cops' daughters, one in jail, the other constantly in danger. In this country, a narc's lifespan isn't longer than a poppy plant's growth cycle. We didn't speak. As she left, I said, good luck. I saw Daisy next in the news. The funniest part, my case hadn't even gone to trial. Seeing her official photo, I suddenly laughed. A cellmate asked, why are you crying? I wiped my face and said lightly, saw an old friend. Unexpectedly, Daisy didn't hire a lawyer and even confessed to more crimes in court, helping the police crush most of the northern Myanmar black market. She had one request, a swift trial and swift death. Later, I got a 10-year sentence, reduced to 8 for good behavior. When I was released, someone sent me a package. Inside were 2 pension claim forms. The sun was brilliant that day, making my eyes water. In the blurred sunlight, I felt like I was back at the entrance ceremony when I was 18. A clear voice cut through the sleepy afternoon. Freshman Representative Daisy finished her speech. Someone beside me laughed. I turned and saw Calvin, looking relaxed and at ease.